not an easy decision, but we've got to take into account the fantastic army of volunteers that we rely on so heavily to put these events on. I think it's fair to say that the number of entries have decreased in recent years. I think we had 9 last year.
It's never grown to, I think, what the original goals were.
We haven't. I mean, if we go back through the history, 2010, we set this path, zero TT on its way. We put up a prize of £10,000 for the first person to reach a 100-mile-an-hour lap around our world-famous course. Michael Rutter achieved that in 2012. But slowly, there's also a gap between the top 2 teams and the rest of the field, and the number of competitors are actually finishing. So I think it is right just to halt it for a moment, to allow technology to come forward, and maybe in 2022 actually look at a proper true TT zero emission race, which we could take in all electric bikes, biofuel, hydrogen fuel cells and other clean technologies, in order to broaden the options, but also to strengthen the event going into the future.
But this decision's come at a time where we've got e-car racing, we've got an attempt earlier this year, although it ended rather spectacularly in a fire, but to even have an electric MotoGP race. I mean, the world is moving that way.
It is, but it's still a long way off from reaching that point where we can actually put on very competitive races.
Do you think people are discouraged by the fact that Mugen throw, as they will, millions and millions of pounds at their development, and they're making great strides, and others feel it's not a level playing field?
Well, that's maybe, as I'm saying, we need to look at the type of fuels that we're using in the future. As I've said, you've got your biofuels, your hydrogen fuel cells, you've got your clean technology fuels. So we could look at all of this going into 2022. We could look at expanding this event to make, instead of having a 1 lap, that we actually have another prize on offer and make it the first average race. So over 2 laps or even 3 laps, really push the technology and say we offer an excellent prize once again for the first team that can achieve a 100-mile average lap around 2 or 3 laps of the TT course. Really push the technology. But at this moment in time, I think we've got to be very mindful of the number of entries, the amount of track time this event takes up, plus the extra sort of pressure that we put on the likes of the Marshals Association, the ACU, and all the army of volunteers. And I think just given the fact there was only 9 entries this year, and the number of race bikes that actually finished, it's right just to halt this for 2 years. Look at the technology again in 2022.
Who are you going to talk to then in the meantime?
They're going to talk to the teams, as we have. We're going to reach out to the universities again, other stakeholder, fuel companies, and see if there's anything that we can actually do to bring this back in 2022, bigger and better, as I say, across all sort of sectors of the green energy sort of field.
Do you see the point, though, that the TT's always been an experimental grounding field for manufacturers, and we are moving inevitably towards greener energy, that actually stopping this race looks counterproductive?
It does, and I can understand that point of view, but I think on reflection of what I'm seeing on comments online, I think most people agree that it's the right time to stop it just in the short period whilst we speak to other stakeholders and see what they want, because the distance between the top team and the rest of the field has gulfed over the last couple of years. So
nevertheless, the development in the class from the very first race to now is probably bigger than any other class we've seen in the history of the TT.
I mean, it has come an amazing, given where it was in 2010.
Just shy of 122 miles per hour.
Michael Rutter achieved that this year, 121.9. It was an incredible feat of achievement. But I say that was 1 lap. So maybe we now need to look at doing 2 laps. Make it a race, reach it out to these other clean technologies and actually make it a proper, true zero emission race, but over a longer field, over a longer distance of course. These are all the things we're going to be looking at over the next 18 months, and hopefully in 2022 we can come back bigger and better with a stronger field, maybe enticed by another prize to achieve that, say, an average lap of 100 over 2 laps instead of just 1.
You've used words like hopefully and we can come back in 2022. are you prepared to say we will be back with a clean emissions race in 2022?
I would love. I don't know. We don't know until we speak to the stakeholders. We don't know until we talk to those, the sort of the technology that may evolve over the next 18 months. But I certainly would like to see this back. I want to see it bigger and better. But I think the fans do as well. Having just 8 or 9 bikes going around, the gap between them, you end up having very few finishers. I just felt that we're asking too much of the marshals who've already had a long day to put this on. It's a case of just stopping for a moment, having a think, having a look at the structure, and then coming back bigger and better in 2022. I personally would love to have this back, and as I say, it's, as you rightfully say, if it was in my powers, it definitely be back in 2022. But that relies on the technology and trying to get other options open to us to make the field wider and bigger and better in that period, a short period of time as we're stopping this race.